My name is Daniel West. I'm 26, an associate consultant at a boutique management firm in Boston, where the elevators smell of burnt espresso and dry-cleaned suits. By day, I navigate tense boardroom negotiations and slide decks that promise impossible growth. By night, I try to make sense of a heart I can't seem to steady. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it. He held my hand while crying and said, "Wait for one more night." I met Ryan Sterling on a drizzly October morning, the kind where the sky sits low and gray over the Charles River. He wasn't my client, he was my colleague's. We collided in the cramped kitchen of our office, both reaching for the same mug from the communal shelf. His fingers brushed mine, and he laughed. An easy, bright sound in a place where laughter usually went to die. "Sorry," he said, dimples flashing. "Guess I stole your mug." "It's fine," I muttered, embarrassed by the sudden pulse of warmth in my cheeks. Ryan was 30, British, newly transferred from the London office. His accent curled around every word like silk. We started having lunch together, first because our schedules aligned, then because we couldn't seem to help it. Over salads and conference call leftovers, he told me about his father's antique shop in Brighton, about how he'd spent his 20s drifting between cities and women but never finding home. I told him less about myself. I'd been raised in a strict Midwestern family that believed emotions belonged behind closed doors. My father's voice still lived in my head. "Never show weakness, Daniel. It'll be used against you." Yet Ryan had a way of coaxing things out of me, like a tide pulling stones from the shore. One night, after a grueling 12-hour day preparing a pitch deck for a pharmaceutical client, we found ourselves the last two in the office. Rain lashed against the windows. My head ached. Ryan walked over with 2 mugs of black tea and set one on my desk. "You're going to burn yourself out," he said. "Come on, let's take a break." We ended up in the copy room of all places, a tiny, windowless cell lined with humming machines. He leaned against the counter, sleeves rolled up, forearms dusted with toner. "Daniel," he said softly, "do you ever feel like you're running at full speed just to stand still?" I swallowed. "All the time." For a moment, the silence between us felt charged, like the air before a storm. He reached out as if to brush a strand of hair from my forehead, then thought better of it. We didn't speak of that moment again, but something shifted. We started staying late together on purpose. Coffee breaks turned into walks by the river. We sat on the stone embankment, knees almost touching, talking about everything and nothing. Then came the gala. Our firm was hosting a charity event at a glass-walled hotel downtown. Everyone dressed to impress. Ryan arrived in a charcoal suit, no tie, hair slightly mussed as though he'd run his hands through it on the way there. When he saw me, his gaze flickered. Something like admiration, something like regret. "Dance with me," he said later, after too many glasses of champagne had loosened my defenses. I hesitated. "Ryan, it's just a dance," he said, but his hand lingered at the small of my back. We moved together under the soft glow of chandeliers. For a moment I forgot about the clients, the office politics, the unspoken rules of our families. I felt only the press of his palm against mine, the scent of his cologne, the steady thud of my heart. Afterward, outside in the cool night air, he cupped my face in his hands. "You're different," he murmured. "You make me want to be better." Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "I have to go," he said abruptly. "Family emergency." And just like that, he was gone. The next few days were a blur. Ryan didn't come to work. Emails bounced back. HR said he was on personal leave. I tried calling, but my messages went unanswered. Finally, late one evening, my phone rang. His number. "Daniel." His voice was hoarse. "Can you meet me? Please." He gave me an address in a rougher part of the city, an old brownstone near the train tracks. I went without thinking. He opened the door looking wrecked, eyes bloodshot, shirt untucked. Inside, the apartment smelled of stale beer and lavender. A woman's voice drifted from the back room, soft and sing-song, like someone talking to a child. "Ryan, what's going on?" I asked. He grabbed my hand, squeezed it so tightly it hurt. Tears welled in his eyes. "Wait for one more night," he whispered. "Please, just one more night." I froze. "What are you talking about?" He broke off, glancing over his shoulder. "It's complicated. My sister. She's not well. If you knew everything, you'd." A door creaked open down the hall. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, peeked out. She had Ryan's dark hair and pale skin. Her eyes were huge, frightened. "Go back to your room, Lily," Ryan said gently. "I'll be there in a minute." She nodded and disappeared. He turned back to me, trembling. "I need you to trust me. I'll explain tomorrow. Just don't give up on me tonight." I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Instead, I nodded. "Okay, one more night." I left feeling like I was walking through a dream. The city lights smeared into streaks of gold and blue. My heart pounded, not just with worry, but with something darker. A gnawing sense that I'd stepped into a story much bigger than us. At work the next day, rumors swirled. Someone said Ryan had been suspended for a conflict of interest. Someone else claimed he'd been seen arguing with a senior partner. My boss pulled me aside, eyes sharp. "You and Sterling are close, aren't you?" he said. I guess," I stammered. "Stay away from him," my boss warned. This could get ugly, but I couldn't stay away. That night, Ryan texted me, "Come to the river. Need to talk." I found him standing by the water, collar up against the wind. He looked older, like he'd aged years in a day. "They're after me," he said without preamble. "Not just the firm. My family too. I tried to fix things, but..." He broke off, shuddering. "Ryan, you're scaring me," I said. "You should be scared." His eyes locked onto mine. "I've made mistakes. Big ones. But you're the only person who's seen me for who I am." The wind whipped around us, carrying the smell of rain and diesel. I thought about my father's warning, "Never show weakness," and realized how much of my life had been built on fear. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. He reached for my hand again, fingers cold. "Just one more night," he whispered. "Then I'll tell you everything." The next evening, the sky over Boston was the color of old slate. Rain streaked the windows of my apartment as I paced, checking my phone every few seconds. At 9:03 p.m., a message arrived from Ryan. "Come to my place. Bring nothing. Please." Against my better judgment, I went. The brownstone door was ajar when I arrived. Inside, the lights were dim, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Ryan sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head bowed. Lily was asleep in a blanket nest on the armchair, clutching a threadbare stuffed rabbit. "I don't know where to start," he said without looking up. "Start anywhere," I replied. He lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot but steady now, like he'd crossed some invisible threshold. "Lily isn't my daughter. She's my sister. Our mother died 3 months ago. Our father's in Brighton running from creditors. There's no one left but me." I sat across from him, trying to absorb this. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I was afraid," he said. "Afraid the firm would find out. Afraid you'd think I was a liar. But it's worse than that." He reached for the coffee table and slid a manila envelope across to me. Inside were printouts of emails, bank statements, contracts. Words like embezzlement and offshore account leapt off the page. "I didn't take the money," Ryan said, "but someone used my name, my login, my signature. When I tried to expose it, they threatened Lily." My stomach dropped. "Who?" He shook his head. "The partner you work under. He's been funneling funds through fake consulting projects." When I confronted him, he told me to shut up or lose everything. "He knows about my family. He knows about you." For a moment, the room tilted. I thought about my boss pulling me aside, warning me off Ryan. It all made a sick kind of sense. "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. "I tried," he said, voice cracking. "But they leaked my report back to the firm before it even landed. Then Lily got a note slipped under our door. Leave it alone or she disappears." He buried his face in his hands. "I'm out of options, Daniel. That's why I kept asking for one more night. Every night I hoped I'd find a way out that didn't drag you down with me." I stared at him, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to run. Another part wanted to reach across the space between us and hold him until the tremors stopped. Instead I said, "We can still fix this. But not if you keep hiding." He looked up at me, eyes shining. "You'd help me? Even now?" "I don't know how yet," I admitted. "But yes." His shoulders sagged with relief. He took my hand, and this time it wasn't desperation but gratitude that made his grip firm. We spent the next hour piecing through the documents, mapping connections. The more we looked, the clearer it became. If we went public, we'd be targets. But if we stayed quiet, the embezzlement would continue and Ryan would take the fall. "Tomorrow morning," I said finally, "we'll go to someone outside the firm. Someone who can't be bought." "Like who?" I thought of my Aunt Margaret, an investigative journalist at a national paper. We hadn't spoken in years because of a family argument about my career path. But she'd never turned down a real story. Ryan exhaled. "Okay, tomorrow." He rose, tucked the documents back into the envelope, and glanced at the sleeping child. "You should go. It's not safe for you here tonight." But I couldn't make myself leave. Instead, I crossed the room, crouched beside Lily's chair, and gently pulled the blanket up around her shoulders. She stirred but didn't wake. Ryan watched me, expression unreadable. "You'd be a good father," he murmured. Something in me cracked at those words. My whole life I'd avoided closeness, convinced it was weakness. And here, in this dim apartment with a frightened man and a sleeping child, I felt more alive than I had in years. "Ryan," I said, standing, "when this is over, you're going to have to let someone in. Not just me, a whole network. You can't keep carrying this alone." He nodded, but his eyes looked far away. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside my window felt like footsteps. At dawn, I called Margaret. She picked up on the third ring. "It's been a while, Danny," she said dryly. "I know," I said, "but I need your help. And it's big." When I finished explaining, there was a pause. Then, "Bring me everything. Don't use your car. And don't come straight to my office. Meet me at the cafe on Tremont at noon." I texted Ryan. "The set." He replied, "Good. Be careful." At 11:45, I was at the cafe, documents in a plain backpack. Ryan arrived 5 minutes later with Lily, who clung to his hand. We found a corner booth. Margaret arrived exactly on time, trench coat and all, hair swept back like a woman heading into battle. She flipped through the documents, eyes narrowing. "If this checks out," she said, "it's not just embezzlement. It's fraud across state lines. Federal." Ryan glanced at Lily. "What happens to us?" "You'll need protection," Margaret said. "But first we blow it open. I'll have my editor run an emergency legal review tonight." For the first time in weeks, Ryan's shoulders eased. He looked at me, and I saw a flicker of the man I'd first met in the office kitchen. The one who laughed easily, who reached for my mug. "Thank you," he whispered. Before I could answer, a black sedan pulled up outside. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the cafe. One of them spoke into an earpiece. Ryan went pale. "They're here," Margaret swore under her breath. "Go out the back. Now." We bolted for the rear exit, slipping into the alley behind the cafe. Rain drizzled down, turning the cobblestones slick. Ryan scooped Lily into his arms. "Where?" I gasped. "There's a safe house," Margaret said, leading us toward a side street. "A friend of mine. Just keep moving." Behind us, the sound of footsteps quickened. Someone shouted. We ran. My lungs burned. Lily clung to Ryan, eyes wide. A car engine roared somewhere nearby. At the corner, Margaret pushed open a nondescript door. "In," she hissed. We stumbled inside, into a dim stairwell. She slammed the door behind us, bolting it. "Upstairs," she said. "We'll regroup." On the 3rd floor, we found a tiny apartment filled with old newspapers and the smell of coffee. Margaret locked the windows, then turned to us. "You're safe for now," she said. "But you can't go home. Not until we publish." Ryan set Lily down on a couch, then leaned against the wall, trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered to me. I never wanted you in danger. I stepped closer, cupped his face in my hands. We're in it together now. He closed his eyes. I don't deserve you. You don't get to decide that, I said softly. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, the three of us sat in a fragile bubble of safety. I realized, with a strange calm, that everything in my life had been leading to this moment. This choice to stand beside someone even when it cost me. The next 24 hours passed in a haze of whispered plans, phone calls, and restless pacing. Margaret coordinated everything with a precision that was almost frightening. Every document, every email trace, every ledger entry was scrutinized and backed up. She had lawyers on standby, reporters ready, and a federal whistleblower hotline primed. Ryan and I barely slept. Lily curled up between us on the couch, a fragile reminder of innocence in a world that had suddenly turned so dangerous. You don't have to stay, Ryan said at one point, his voice low, heavy with exhaustion. I'm not leaving, I replied. Not now, not ever. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't dared hope for. Trust. A fragile, trembling trust that felt like it could shatter with a single word. The storm broke that night, both literal and figurative. Sirens screamed through the streets, distant but threatening. Through Margaret, we arranged for the final handoff of documents to federal authorities. It had to be done in person, a downtown office under heavy surveillance. I rode with Ryan, Lily between us, her small fingers entwined in mine. The city looked alien under the rain, lights blurred and bleeding across the wet asphalt. My mind raced, imagining every worst-case scenario. But when I glanced at Ryan, determination carved into his pale face, I felt a courage I didn't know I possessed. At the office, the handoff went smoothly but tense. Federal agents took the files, confirming every fraud detail. Ryan's eyes never left mine, silent gratitude and fear flickering in tandem. Are we free? He asked quietly. For now, I said, though neither of us could believe it entirely. The danger isn't over, but the truth is out. That night, back in the safe house, we allowed ourselves a moment of relief. Margaret had stepped out to make final arrangements with her editors, leaving us in a fragile silence. Lily was asleep. Ryan turned to me, voice breaking. Daniel, I don't even know how to say this. I've wanted to tell you for so long. I reached for his hand. You don't have to say anything. Just be here. He hesitated, then lowered his head onto my shoulder. For the first time in weeks, we let ourselves breathe. Tears slid down his cheeks, warm and unashamed. I held him, feeling the weight of his fear, his love, his exhaustion, and his vulnerability. I never wanted anyone to see me like this, he whispered. Weak, scared, lost. You're human, I said softly. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. We stayed like that until dawn, tangled together, sharing a silence more intimate than any words could convey. Lily stirred, looking between us with sleepy eyes, then snuggled back into the blankets. When morning light crept through the curtains, reality intruded, but differently now. The world was still dangerous, still uncertain, but there was a thread of hope weaving through it, a connection I couldn't ignore. In the weeks that followed, Ryan's name was cleared. The partner responsible for the fraud was arrested, and Margaret's exposé ran nationwide. Slowly, the office returned to its relentless rhythm, but Ryan and I moved differently through it. We no longer hid behind polite smiles or spreadsheets. We communicated in small touches, lingering glances, and shared silences that said more than words ever could. And Lily became ours in a way words can't capture. She laughed more, relaxed more, and I found that the walls I'd built around my heart began to crumble, brick by brick. One evening, standing by the Charles River where we had first spent hours talking, Ryan took my hands in his. The wind tugged at his hair, the city lights reflecting on the water. Daniel, he said softly, I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you. All of it. The fear, the joy, the unknown. I smiled, heart full. Then we face it together. Always. We stood in silence for a long while, letting the river carry away the last remnants of dread. The sun dipped low, painting the city in hues of fire and gold. And in that moment, I understood something essential. Love isn't about perfection. It isn't about being fearless or untouchable. It's about choosing someone every day, even when the world tries to tear you apart. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, the story I had never told anyone, the story that changed me forever. He held my hand while crying and said, "Wait for one more night." And in that night, I learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to embrace love in spite of it. Life will challenge us, betray us, frighten us, but love will remain, fragile, fierce, and unshakable. And sometimes the one night you wait for becomes a lifetime you never want to end. Ryan fell asleep beside me, his arm across my chest. Lily's soft breathing filled the apartment. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. And I knew I never would again.